to Stars and Bars, where we analyze your favorite artists' astrological charts and interpret how astrology plays out in their music, lyrics, and career. If you're new here and that sounds interesting to you, feel free to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a video, and let me know in the comments who you want to learn about next. Today's subject is one of my favorite artists of recent years. They have a unique pop rap sound that has garnered international attention since their debut album, a single from which made it on the radio as well. His artistry possesses a variability and magnetism that makes him hard not to watch. In my opinion, he also has some of the funniest and most creative music videos that I've ever seen. He has been nominated for a BET Award, and I expect many more nominations and awards in the future. It's what he deserves with his writing, rapping, and singing skill. Today, we are talking about Aminé. Here is Aminé's chart. Adam Aminé Daniel was born April 18th, 1994 in Portland, Oregon, at a time that at this point is undisclosed. We are not sure what time he was born or what his rising sign is, so that explains why that part isn't mentioned, and there's no houses next to the signs in the list. What we do know about his personal placements is that he is an Aries sun with a Cancer moon. His Mercury and Mars both join his sun in Aries, and he also has Venus in Taurus. Without the birth time, his dominant sign is Aries, his dominant planet is the moon, and his dominant element is water. But that could change depending on what time he was born. Unless his rising isn't an air sign, he is definitely air deficient. So he does not have very much, if any, air in his chart at all. But he does have lots of fire and water, and that would be the case regardless of what his rising actually is. Before we get too much more specific and start referencing music, let's quickly go through Aminé's albums and projects that we'll be covering today. The first of which is his first mixtape, Odyssey to Me. I actually feel like this is a really underrated album, and it's rated so poorly, in fact, that it was really hard for me to find it. The only place that I was really able to find it was posted by a third party on YouTube, so maybe he didn't want me to find it, but I did. But I think it's a really amazing album, honestly. It showcases Aminé's variability in his talents so well. We see him take lots of different positions, from emotional ones to braggadocious ones. We see him sing and rap and tell a hell of a story. The themes on this album are similar to his modern music, lots of romance, sexuality, and braggadocio. The romance and sexuality kind of tie into his Venus in Taurus and his Cancer moon, whereas the braggadocio is very much his Aries placements. And the sounds range from some very Taurian chill bars to some very hype Aries energy. The next project is Calling Brio from 2015. This album was created as an act of escapism through and through. He rented a cabin to record it and distract him from the rest of his life. We even see Aminé step into some production on this album. Overall, the album is pretty upbeat. It features quite a bit of tribal sounds and symbolism. We get big Aries / Taurus, escapist, serial optimist energy on this album, but the Cancer moon definitely comes through with the intention. After all, the album is to distract him from his innermost emotions, which is moon stuff. Next, we have Aminé's debut album, Good For You, from 2017. We see a shift on this album toward Aminé finding his unique sound and really solidifying it. That sound is a very pop rap sound, like I said earlier. It's got some quirky sound to it. It's goofy and playful, but still smooth. That's kind of how I would describe this sound. The song Caroline from this album kind of became Aminé's claim to fame. It charted for 28 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100 and peaked at number 11, and it was on the radio constantly. Aminé also turns up the collabs on this album with collaborations from Nelly, Kehlani, Offset, and more. His confidence also really seems to skyrocket on this album. We add some very Aries hype energy, even more so than the last album, to his demeanor, but he also becomes more transparent about his mental health and his big Cancer moon feelings. We also see lots of romance from that Taurus Venus. Next, we have my personal favorite project thus far by Aminé, 1.5 from 2018. This is probably obvious from the name, but this is meant to go in between Good For You and Aminé's next album, Limbo, which of course we'll talk about in a moment. He called it an EP LP mixtape album. So it's not necessarily an album through and through, but it's not quite just an EP, LP, or mixtape either. The confidence Aminé shows increases even more on this album, so we get even more of that Aries braggadocio on this album. It's a much more lighthearted album than really, I think, any of his projects. Um, they're most of the songs forego deeper meanings at all, but there's certainly some emotion. We can't have Cancer Moon Aminé without any emotion, but it is a lower saturation of emotion than on the other albums. We see lots of Taurian flaunting and flexing his luxurious lifestyle that his previous album afforded him. We also get some romance and tenderness, like I said, but not much compared to his other music. And then most recently, we have Aminé's sophomore-ish album, Limbo, from August 7th, 2020. If we move closer again to the emotional side of Aminé's multidimensional musical persona. So for the first two albums, we were pretty emotional, you know, from the pop to rap, emotional to braggadocio. We were pretty far over to the emotional side. For 1.5, we went way further away from the emotional side, but for this album, we find ourselves closer in the middle. Now, there's certainly no lack of braggadocio on this album, it's just not as much of a focus as it was on the previous one. One thing that Aminé turns up on this album more so than any other one is his pride in his cultural heritage. I think many people of color and artists of color have become more vocal, especially in light of a lot of the events happening this year, 2020, if you're watching this from the future, in the US especially. Overall, we see more maturity and character growth as Aminé thinks about the future and seems to heal from some of his mental health issues from previous albums. So there are the projects. Now you kind of know what we're talking about music-wise. So let's start at the top and find some traits for Sun in Aries. Now, like I said before, Aminé's Mercury and Mars are also in Aries, so we're going to cross all of those off at once. The Sun represents vitality and identity, Mercury represents communication and knowledge, and Mars represents aggression, sexuality, and energy output. So all of these areas of Aminé's life exist in the shine of aggressive, direct, pioneering Aries energy. Mars also rules Aries, so having it in its dominion or ruled sign even further strengthens the Aries energy in Aminé's chart. And for this reason, I'm pretty confident that no matter what Aminé's rising is, he's probably still Aries dominant. So the first fundamental Aries trait that I want to talk about is aggressiveness and directness. This is really what the Aries MO is all about. So let's take a look at some examples of that. Because Aminé does have so much Aries and so many areas of his life are affected by Aries energy, one of many ways Aminé's aggressiveness and directness often comes through is sexually. This makes sense because one of the planets that Aminé has in Aries, like I said before, is Mars. Mars, being in its dominion, will strengthen the sexual energy and sexual aggressiveness or straightforwardness. A very vivid example of this is on a song from Odyssey to Me called Can I Cut? With 4 U's. And yeah, he expresses this sexual straightforwardness in a very blunt way on this song. He says, um, he says, fuck foreplay. Girl, this isn't what the fuck I play for. I'm trying to get straight to it. If you ain't with that, I'll find someone who is. So yeah, I'm sorry to start with that one, but we do things in chronological order here. And that just happens to be the first big example. And I couldn't really get out of that. Moving forward, the opening track to Good For You, Veggies, gives us a lot of bluntness about Aminé's interest and disinterest in a romantic partner. He says, if I'm being blunt, I really want to fuck Emily. Bitch, I'm missing your call. I don't got time for your problems at all. So Emily, yes. This bitch's problems? No, not okay. Aminé is not interested. And then moving forward from there, there's a good chance you've heard the song Caroline before. It was on the radio like constantly a couple years ago. Lots of straightforward lyrics with regards to sex and romance on here. I'm not going to read them all, but I've got them here on the screen. You can pause if you want to continue reading it or listen to the song, but it's not like super child friendly, just a warning. However, if you're still watching this video after the last song reference, then there's a good chance that child friendly isn't what you're here for, but just a warning. Now, another song on Good For You that talks about this is Wedding Crashers, where he's very blunt about stunning on his ex, essentially. He says, this is dedicated to my ex-lovers. Hope that you hear this. Never find another. Me and my friends, we don't worry or pretend. Hope you play this at your wedding. Yeah, the one I won't attend. And then on 1.5, we have a song called Ratchet Saturn Girl. This is a two-part song. The first is some very raunchy rap about the type of relationship that Aminé likes to enjoy. And the second part is much more romantic. We'll talk on that later. Again, I'm not going to read all these lyrics, but they're here. You can go ahead. They might be on this side. I don't know. I should stop only using one hand and use both hands every time. But they're on the screen. Enjoy. And then the last example that we're going to talk about for this is Burden from Limbo. This is the opening track. This song is very straightforward about a non-sexual or romantic issue this time around. We're talking about systemic racism in the US. Now, racism is not astrological, but the bluntness and the approach to which Aminé takes to talk about it on this song, I do feel is very Aries-like. He opens the track with the phrase, when your skin darker, shit gets harder. And then he also speaks on the effect of systemic racism on incarceration and how certain crimes or actions are seemingly more punishable when it comes to people of color. There are more examples, of course, but those are some notable ones. I'm not going to go through every example that this Aries man was blunt because it's most of the time. Another important Aries trait before we make our way down the chart is ambition. Being ruled by the planet of energy output, it makes a lot of sense that someone with a lot of Aries influence would have lots of ambition and possess so much drive to succeed. First example of this is from Odyssey to Me on a song called My Emotions. The third and final verse says, never compromise to survive. I'ma get this shit either if I die or I'm alive. White rag, white horse, white torch. I'ma end up on your screen if you like it or you don't. And then on Good For You, the song Money also speaks on being determined to succeed. He says, every day I wake up, gotta get this cake up, looking at my life like, is this what it's made of? Money rule the world around me, that's why it's on my mind. And then we're gonna touch on Burden again real quick, where he says, man, I'd rather die before I give up, keep my fucking foot on their necks, and never let up. And then finally, before we move on to the Moon, we have Shimmy from Limbo. He opens up this song with, it's been a whole year, let's not front, it's my year, I'm here to fuck up your whole career. And then moving down the chart, Similar to Mars in Aries, Aminé also has the moon in its dominion in Cancer. The moon represents someone's innermost emotions, and Cancer is thus a sensitive and intuitive sign. Let's take a look at some examples of Aminé's sensitivity in his lyrics. The first of which being Brightwood from Calling Brio. He says, when I'm all alone and my world come crashing down, do I know who knows me? He also says, took a lot of pills to kill my emotions, which connects his sensitivity to his emotional troubledness, which we will definitely come back to, by the way. And then on Good For You, we have Sundays, which speaks on mental illness as well as romance. In a verse, he says, groupies say they want to do me, truly that feel like a blessing, but finding one to love is getting harder every second. And then in the chorus, he says, some days we get Sundays, but most days the rain comes down and I feel like I'm bound to drown. And then Limbo has a song called Mama, which you may not be surprised to hear is an ode to Aminé's mother. And you're also probably not surprised to hear that it is adorable and very sweet and wholesome. He says, look where I'm at, mommy, who would have knew? Sometimes I miss the days when you'd take me to school. Used to promise when I'm rich that I would get your favorite whip. You was my lift before the lift, so you deserve you a coupe. And then he also says, and it's you that I'm missing. Every time I needed someone, you would listen. I'ma write you a song to put on every day, so the times that I'm gone, you could smile when it plays. Okay, so we've discussed the Aries sun and Cancer moon. We do not know what Aminé's rising is, and since Mercury is also in Aries, our next placement to talk about is Aminé's Venus in Taurus. Now, Taurus is ruled by Venus, making this 3 important personal placements that Aminé has in Dominion, or their ruling sign. This is pretty impressive and not super common. Aminé is genuine, authentic, and his traits are expressed in the most pure form possible. Venus rules art, beauty, pleasure, and romance, so Taurus is thus a romantic sign that loves comfort and the finer things. Loving the finer things is mostly a rapper thing, right? So we're not going to break that down and go into every example that he says that, because you've heard it a million times if you listen to any rap music at all. But I do want to talk on his Taurus-Venus romanticism. So the first example I want to bring up of this is from Odyssey to Me. It's the song Oliver and Jordana. And he says, and I'm staring at your eyes like I'm thinking I knew you from my past life. And I'm staring at your eyes like, girl, you light me up like a nightlight. And then on Good For You, we have a song called Heebie Jeebies, which is actually featuring Kehlani, and we do have a video on her. So I will put that in the cards and in a link in the description so you can check that video out if you're a Kehlani fan. The chorus says, you got so much potential, every moment spent with you, I bet was always eventful. I've never seen your type of species, give me heebie-jeebies. And then moving forward, on 1.5, we talked about part 1 of Ratchet Saturn Girl earlier, but now we are going to talk about part 2. The chorus says, you're the one that I need, fell in love, you cut me deep, Saturn Girl, you're ecstasy, I need your love to stay alive, out of this world, you're out of sight, Saturn Girl, you changed my life. And then in verse 2, he also says, help me find new ways to get around, you're the one I love, I hope it counts for something. And then before moving out of the personal placements, we also have Together, which is also from 1.5. He says, leaking from the pain, need a band-aid, you're the main thing I need to maintain. Almost had my baby, need a damn drink. Swimming through your feelings, how I stay sane. You're the one I need, I hope this really works, because everything I need is always in your purse. Now, another water sign besides Cancer that is prominent in Aminé's chart is Scorpio. Aminé has both Jupiter and his North Node in Scorpio. Jupiter shows how someone can generate success for themselves, and the North Node represents the life purpose or the ideal direction for someone's life to be taking. Both of these suggest that Aminé finds success in a Scorpio way. So what is a Scorpio way? Scorpio is sensitive, similar to Cancer, in that it is a water sign, but it's much more prone to mystery, secretiveness, and melancholy than its other water sign counterparts. Scorpio and its associated 8th house and planet Pluto are all associated with the darker areas of the mind and world. Emotional struggle and melancholy are Scorpio ruled, and Aminé has found success and fulfillment through essentially public shadow work, or working through his harder struggles lyrically and musically and in the public eye. So we do have some examples of that, of course. The first being back to the song OTM, From Odyssey to Me, because this song is just a gold mine of transparency. He speaks on mental health and feeling down, and I'll put the lyrics up here, but for the sake of just making our way through this video, I'm going to go ahead and move past this one. Feel free to pause if you want to keep reading. Another song we discussed was Sundays from Good For You, and we're just going to touch on, again, the chorus we already talked about on his emotional troubledness. Also on Good For You, we have Turf, a song whose chorus shows Aminé's discontent with his life. He says, I look around and I see nothing in my neighborhood, not satisfied, don't think I'll ever want to stay for good. Packed up my bags, told mom and dad I gotta go, and once I do, they'll finally see the inner me. And then finally, in this section, I also want to talk about a song called Dr. Whoever, which is the opening track to 1.5. I'll put up some lyrics to that song up here, but there's quite a few of them that are important, so I'm not going to read through them. But this song sets the tone for lots of emotional transparency on the song by starting off positioning the audience as Aminé's therapist. He questions whether it's smart for him to tell people how he feels, and says he should take his own advice when he advises people, especially people of color, to talk about their feelings. He talks about suicide and other very dark topics. So we're past planetary positions. Now I just want to talk about one aspect in Aminé's chart. An aspect is an angle created by two planets that are a certain amount of degrees away from each other. These can be harmonious or inharmonious. And the aspect that I want to talk about today is Aminé's Moon square Mercury aspect. The square is an inharmonious aspect, and it occurs when two planets are approximately 90 degrees away from each other. As discussed earlier, the moon is the planet responsible for our innermost emotions and sensitivities, and our Mercury is responsible for our logic, our knowledge, and our communication. So these both describe our inner thoughts, but the moon kind of talks about the emotional side of our inner thoughts, whereas the logical side is covered by Mercury. Having these two in an inharmonious relationship with each other can cause conflict between the heart, so the moon, and the mind, so Mercury, and can cause the native to question themselves. Of course, this is just common in humans in general, right? But the astrology shows that it's a theme, and so does Aminé's lyrics. So here are some examples of that. The first is from OTM, where he says, I've been searching for myself, I've been wondering who I am, lost in a place, no trace, on the Odyssey to Me. And then from the same album, we have My Emotions, where he says, oh yes, I know you put me on earth for a reason, but can I know what's the reason? My emotions got me feeling like I don't know myself. So on Odyssey to Me, we have lots of questioning of Aminé's identity and his purpose. And then on Calling Brio, we have a song called Brightwood, where Aminé says, I know she wonders what just goes on in my head. She'd try to get to know me, but I'd rather fuck instead. See, sex is therapeutic for the lonesome. We'd rather be alone, but hormones really just want some. So he says essentially that he doesn't communicate properly, and that leaves his love interest wondering and guessing about his thoughts and their relationship. And then on Dr. Whoever, like we already talked about, one of the lines says, hey doc, do I tell him how I actually feel, or do I see a therapist and numb the pain with the pills? He shows he's questioning himself on whether he should express or even allow himself to feel his emotions. This is also toward the end of the song when he has already been telling us how he feels, which kind of hammers home that questioning oneself theme. And that's it. So thank you so much for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel and comment who you want to learn about next. Have a good one.